how many layers do we have on the skin? We have epidermis, yes. We have epidermis. We have dermis. And we have hypodermis, yes. Hypodermis is the fat. And the fat gives the contour to the skin. You know, the skin is so soft because of what? Because of the fat. It is kind of protection. It's kind of cushion under the skin. So the hypodermis is there. And now we have dermis. Yes? This is the dermis layer of the skin. What is inside the dermis layer of the skin? What is the most prominent component of the dermis of the skin? The most common prominence of the skin is collagen and elastin. Yes, the dermis is also called true skin. The dermis is also called true skin. If you want to know how strong and how sturdy is the dermis, is just look at the leather shoes or leather jacket. When you have the shoes or jacket, you can say, I have a collagen shoes. It is collagen. It's so strong. Do you know why it has to be so strong? Because it has to hold on all the structures that is in our body. Everything that is on our body is just kept together by that leather, by collagen. So it has to be very strong collagen. How thick is the epidermis, ladies? How many of you have had blister, skin blister? That's the epidermis. The skin on the blister is epidermis. And if you poke the epidermis, the blister, what you see? It's a kind of fleshy part of the body, yes? That is dermis. The thickness of epidermis is the little tiny thickness of the blister. So it's not very thick. A little thicker than the thickness of a piece of paper. Okay, now let's go back to epidermis. How many layers do we have on epidermis? The very first layer of epidermis here. I'll be back talk about the melanocyte and those things. The very first layer of the skin is, ladies, it is called stratum, what? Basilar or stratum germinativum. Stratum germinativum or stratum basilar. This is the very first layer of the skin. And they duplicate, means one of these cells become two, 1 and 2. One of them start the journey to the surface of the skin, and one stay on the stratum germinativum or stratum basilar. The one that stays is called mother cell. The one that goes up is called daughter cell. Which one is daughter cell? Which one is mother cells? Nobody knows. Okay, so this is a stratum germinativum or stratum basilar. That's the very basic layer of the skin. And these cells, they are duplicate. Okay? Duplicate, and they are making a new layer of the cells. What is this new layer of the cell, ladies? They are making a new layer of the cell. It's called a stratum spinosum. Stratum spinosum. And the reason is stratum spinosum because they're supposed to protect the skin. They're supposed to protect the body. So they are making a kind of connection between each other. It's called spine. And because of this spine-like structure between the cells is called stratum spinosum. Yes? And when we are doing a chemical peel, we are dissolving some of these spines when we're doing stratum spinosum. So blister, we talk about blister, yes? Is it easy to poke the blister? You have to poke it with a needle, yes? It's not easy to poke it. It's very strong. Do you know why? Because of this structure in the stratum spinosum. They are so connected to each other. So stratum spinosum. Now we know the superficial layer of the skin is dead. Yes, it's called dead skin. Now we have another layer of the skin. At this time, the skin is kind of going to die. And it's one of the extraordinary and amazing things that happen. Imagine if the surface of the skin was alive. What's happened? When you touch something, it was bleeding. Yes, it was painful. And I don't know who made this system. That magical design is so the surface of the skin is dead. So I don't feel it. You know, I don't have any problem with feeling it. If it was like fresh, if it was fresh, like say, let's say if it was something that was okay. Now these cells are going to die. So when they are dying, what's happened? What is the things that is happening? When somebody's die, they get all the good things and belonging collected. Yes, if somebody is dying, they get all the good things and belonging collected to make sure they are connected to each other. They put every good things into little granules. That's why we call this stratum granulosum. All the good fat and lipids and everything goes to little granules, and that's why it's called stratum granulosum. Now, after this stratum granulosum, these cells, now they don't have anything. They becomes flat, completely flat, and they make another layer of the cell, which is called stratum corneum. Stratum corneum. Now I have stratum corneum, the very first superficial layer of the skin, the one that we feel. There is another little tiny layer here in between these two, which is called stratum lucidum. We mostly ignore them because we don't have it much of it on the body. They are mostly on the hand and feet, palm of the hand.
Layers in the epidermis, right?
Yes, there is 5 layers, and this one is called stratum lucidum. But we don't really talk about stratum lucidum because it is mostly on the palm of the hand and sole of the feet. So we don't really talk about it and mostly ignore it because we don't do really much. We don't have much about stratum lucidum. Now we have stratum corneum on the surface of the skin. Now there is something amazing happen, extraordinary. What is that? Do you remember we talked about these granules? These granules are filled with fat and lipid. Fat and lipid. Let me repeat the example. So if I do this, does the water leak? No. Why? Because the cap is sealed. Yes? So the content of lipids of these granules, they go in between cells and fill between the cells, and they are fat, so they are not water absorbent. And now the skin is sealed with fat and things. So that is interesting, so interesting. Now the cells are here, the space between cells are covered, are filled with fat from the stratum, the granules in the stratum granulosum, and when there is with the fat, so the water cannot get off of the skin, and also the water cannot get into the skin. Just imagine if you didn't have this protective layer and you go to, let's say, pool or swimming, your body will come without fat, okay? What's happened to these spines here? Do you remember we had this spine? What's happened to this spine? Do we still have them? Yes, we do. We still have this spine in between cells on different parts. When you are using enzyme peel, In our case, we use the enzyme peel. You are dissolving this and this spine. This spine is called, the name is desmosome. Desmosome. Okay? When they are coming to the surface of the skin, the same desmosome now is called corneodesmosome. Yes, desmosome and corneodesmosome. Now let's go back to the questions of melanin and melanocyte. Where are melanin and melanocyte in these pictures? Where they live and what they do? Melanin and melanocyte, 5 to 10%, 5 to 10% of the cells of stratum germinativum, they are melanocyte. It's called melanocyte. The cell is melanocyte. What is made is called melanin. So per each 10 cells, we have one melanocyte. There is one more melanocyte here. There is one more melanocyte here. Melanocyte are the cell. These are the cell melanocyte. It's called melanocyte. Let me continue and then you are getting. This melanocyte, they are so interesting. What is that? They are cells and they have some arms that goes in between layers of the cells. One melanocyte, they have some arms that goes into the cells. This melanocyte has some arms, goes in between layers of the cells. And again, it's so genius of these arms. And what's happened? They are releasing melanin. They are the cell that they are releasing melanin. Yes? So why do we have this kind of a structure, melanocyte? If this is one cell, let's say this is a cell of melanocyte. It has some arms like this that goes, and each melanocyte, ladies, each melanocyte serves about 36 cells. So each melanocyte about 36 cells. What's happened? When there is danger, what is the job of melanocyte? The job of melanocyte is to protect the skin. Imagine if there was no melanocyte. When there is UVs coming to the skin, melanocyte, when you say you go to the beach, yes, and you have the skin burn or whatever, they release the cell. All of a sudden, all the skin becomes darker skin. When they are darker, what's happened? They don't let the sun or UV to damage the skin. They protect the skin. And they have 36, they have this structure. So when they are damaged, so one of them, they just spread all over the skin, layer of the skin, and they release melanin. Melanocyte, how many, the number of melanocyte is the same in all races and all ethnics, black, white, whatever. But the amount of melanin they produce is different. For instance, somebody with Fitzpatrick 6, the melanocyte makes a lot of melanin. Fitzpatrick 4 or 5, as I said before, it's the most challenging to work on because they have melanocyte and their melanocyte is very active. It can be very active and angry. If you make a trouble, if you make, let's say, something, any damage to the skin, they immediately release a lot of melanin. And you have hyperpigmentation, which is not easy. What about Fitzpatrick type 1 or 2? Their skin is very, very white, whitish, pale. Do they have melanocyte? Yes, but their melanocytes are extremely lazy. They don't tan. They are not tanning, means releasing this melanin. They burn, and that's why they get so many cancer. It's cancer is very common among the people with very pale or white skin. But with darker skin, they don't. From our perspective, as a treatment provider, yes, if there is any Fitzpatrick 4 or 5, their melanocyte can becomes very angry, and when they are angry, they make a lot of melanin and inject melanin all over the skin. Natural moisturizing factor.
Oh yeah, did it come?
Yes, no, it takes a few days. So natural moisturizing factor is another amazing thing. Imagine we have these cells here, yes? And these cells, as long as they are there, nothing happens. What they need? They need water, yes? So what's happened? Do you remember we talked about this stratum germinativum, then stratum spinosum, then stratum granulosum? They have frames to keep them shape in this. If there was not that frame or that framework, what's happened? The skin collapse, yeah? So they have a kind of framework, they have kind of a structure to keep the shape of the skin. As this goes up to the upper layer, these structures, they kind of damage, broken, and eventually they are gathering to another group of collection into the stratum corneum. There is another group of connection into the stratum corneum. What we call this? We call them natural moisturizing factor. What is the content of this natural moisturizing factor? The content of this granule was fat. The content of this natural moisturizing factor is amino acid, is protein. Yes? So just imagine protein. Muscle is protein. Fat is fat. Can you think that the fat can make a frame of something? No, the fat is so loose. It just collapse. But what about protein? It can mix, yes? Fat doesn't absorb water, does it? No? No. But protein can. When you throw a little piece of fat or whatever into the water and take it off, does it happen anything to it? No. But what if you put a little bit of meat? It swell. Yes? And now we have water here. So why do we need water in this layer of the skin? Because this water, yes, this layer is dead. This layer is almost dead. But chemically, it is active. Biologically, it's dead. So these cells, they don't make any new cells. But so biologically, let me find some place here. Biologically, they are dead. But chemically and enzymatically, enzymatically they are active. Why they are active? Because they need to exfoliate. Imagine if the cells keep going and piling on up each other. That would be very ugly, isn't it? So what they need? They need water. Where is the water? What is inside the cell? Now this water facilitates the exfoliation of the skin, so the skin is exfoliating. What does it mean, dehydration of the skin, ladies? Now we have the structure of the skin, stratum germinativum, stratum basale, stratum spinosum, stratum granulosum, stratum corneum. What does it mean, ladies, the dehydration of the skin? Imagine you have a blister, yes, on the skin because of the burn, because of whatever, shoes, whatever. And imagine if the blister, you cut the blister skin and there is nothing on it. What's happened to the skin behind it? Dries out, yes? So this layer of the skin, ladies, this layer of the skin, this stratum corneum, it seals. So it doesn't let any water to evaporate from the skin. Let me find another color. So the water that is coming inside, they blocked here. They cannot get off of the skin because there is a fat layer in between cells, and this fat, they seal the skin, isn't it? It's beautiful, isn't it? It's so beautiful. What about the water from outside? No, it cannot, because again it's sealed, the skin. So when you are doing macrodermabrasion, yes, or when you are doing a chemical peel, what's happened?
You're exfoliating.
Exfoliating. When you're exfoliating means you are damaging this layer. Yes? When you are damaging this layer, what do you need to do? You need to do a moisturizer. Moisturizer means the same fat inside these granules you are adding to the skin is called moisturizer. Moisturizer. Moisturizer means, well, this is not good. Moisturizer. When you are adding moisturizer. When you are adding moisturizer means you are replenishing the fat in between cells, and now your skin again sealed. Isn't that beautiful? It's beautiful. So we have one NMF, natural moisturizing factor. We have this water, and then it's called dehydration, and so on. So melanoma is the cancer of melanocyte. When these cells becomes cancerous, it's called melanoma. Why does it cancer? What is called cancer? What is cancer, lady? Each cell, these cells, they are duplicate. Yes? They are not duplicate unlimitedly. Yes? One cell becomes two cell. Yes? And then this becomes another two. Yes? And somehow they stop. They said, okay, this is stop. Yeah? What is inside the nucleus of the cell? It is DNA. You know DNA, yes? DNA is a structure of the genes. Somewhere on this DNA here, it says stop. When they duplicate, it said, okay, stop. Every 20 minutes is fine. I don't need to keep duplicating, yes? If the UV or free radicals comes and hit this stop sign, what's happened? Now there is no stop sign. When there is no stop sign, what's happened? The cell keep replicating over and over and over and over. No stop. And when there is no stop, the new cell that is coming, these cells, is duplication of this cell, yes? Duplication of this cell. And this cell doesn't have that stop sign because it's duplicated, it's replicated from the previous cell. So this one doesn't have. And that's why it becomes cancer, and the cancer means the cells keep growing, non-stop, over and over and over. Metastase, have you heard the word metastase?
What?
Metastase? No? If this cancer stay on the skin with the melanocyte or melanin, if it is, ladies, one of your main and probably the most important job of you in the spa or med spa or wherever you work is to pay attention to melanin, because to melanoma, because melanoma is extremely lethal. It kills. It's I think it's even more lethal than the breast cancer. And it's more, yes, and it's more prevalent than breast cancer. It is extremely, and people, and you are the one who for the first time detect a melanoma. The moment you see something, it's called A, B, C, D, E, you need to refer it. Anyway, if this cell is here, the cell becomes melanoma. What if one of these cells detach and goes to the brain? Now, inside the brain, we have melanoma. It goes to lung, goes to different places. and spread and becomes melanoma.